Hey everyone, I'm Scott Stokely with my co-host Luke and Derek, and this is Outside the Circle with Scott Stokely. Hello, gentlemen.
How
Hello,
you doing today,
Scott.
sir?
Good day,
Oh
Scott.
man, I'm doing. It's been a rough couple days,
Under
which we'll get to in a minute. But first off, how are you all doing?
doing well, doing
Yeah,
well,
can't
doing well.
can't complain. Just trying to make it through this crazy life.
It's getting warm here in the mitten, so can't complain about that.
In in the mitten,
In the
that's
mitten.
actually. Yeah, if I didn't know what you were talking about, I would now.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so well, let's just like jump right to it. I don't know if this is going to be the most fun, lighthearted episode ever. A If you haven't heard, a very good friend of the disc golf community, John Baldwin, uh, he took his own life a couple days ago, and John or is the 2011 Masters PDGA Masters World Champion. He is I believe, the current MP50 doubles champion with Barry Schultz, and he made his living touring disc golfing. And he he lived on the road for years. He knew a lot of people, touched a lot of people, and I asked you guys if we could not talk disc golf on this episode, or at least barely, and if we could instead talk about depression. And you guys thought that was a good idea,
Yeah.
and I appreciate
Great
that.
idea.
Thank you guys. So if you're just looking for lighthearted disc golf stuff, there's nothing wrong with that. Um, Feel free to tune out and come back next show. We'll be goofy and silly, and we'll say dumb things like we normally do.
Right.
But I just the reason I want to talk about it is because like we're all trying to process this thing, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. But for me, the way I process tragedy is I either have to find a positive in it, or if I can't find anything positive in it, I need to try to make something positive out of it. And I can't seem to find anything positive about this. So therefore, I would like to take some time to talk. And if we can maybe reach somebody that ultimately helps somebody, then something positive would come out of something that is just, God, so hard to pick the right words. Like I
Yeah.
keep feeling
Sure.
I'm speaking, and I keep thinking I'm just going to choose the wrong words, and then this is going to be recorded, and I will have said something wrong. But my head's a bit cloudy still. But anyways, if we can make sense out of something senseless and help somebody, then I think it'll be our best episode, maybe ever.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
so you guys had said that both of you have experiences in with depression or being around depression. Can you just share that, or if you're open to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I've dealt with depression personally since high school. Probably even before that, but I think more around the time that I was in high school is when it started to become more awareness for that type of thing, especially within the school system. Um, so, I was bullied from a really young age. I've had conversations with you previously of losing quite a bit of weight over, the last 5 years or so of my life. And for a majority of my life, I was overweight. I was big all the time. So there was, constant ridicule, constant bullying, things like that. I have vivid memories of needing to run home from the bus stop every day because the kids that would get off on my bus stop would try to beat me up before I would get home. So definitely consisted through most of school. And then kind of hit adulthood pretty hard, I guess is the best way I could say that. And with that come the trials and tribulations of being an adult. Also, all of the unattended things from childhood, if that makes sense. So those continue to pile up, responsibilities of life pile up. And by the time I was, 19, 20 years old, I was ready to explode. Getting real open and honest, there was a short period of time where I was even in a hospital, trying to deal with my mental health and just trying to figure out. At that point, I couldn't find a valid reason on why I was here. And that was just a question I kept asking myself consistently over and over and over again. Why am I here? Why am I here? What's the point? And then while dealing with all of those kind of situations and really trying to find what made me, if that made sense, because I didn't know. I had my first child, and that for me was a game-changing situation. I think that was the first point in my life where I didn't ask myself, why was I here? And I couldn't give myself a valid answer. From that moment on, I always had a valid answer. And that's not to say that's the case for everybody, but for me at that point in my life, becoming a dad at a pretty young age and going through divorce as well at a pretty young age, all of those different things tend to pile up over time, and it tends to get hard. And I can say even now, there's definitely days where I sit and think, it's like, man, why? Why does this happen? Why is this happening? I guess is the best way to put it. But I can't ever not answer the question, why am I here anymore? And that's kind of the biggest thing. Even to say, I have two beautiful children now. I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old. And they're my best friends and keep me pushing through every single day, regardless of how hard it is. And I just recently found out, and we announced that I'm going to be a dad again, come November. So, and even another reason to add to the list of, why am I here? So that being said, I personally have dealt with depression often, and my friends and close loved ones around me continue to deal with it every day. And I think it's just something that, especially this episode, for instance, bringing awareness to it and allowing people to have that open platform to communicate and not feel judgment or feel like they're going to be, especially, and I'm not saying any one way or another, but having an open platform for everybody to communicate their feelings about being depressed or feeling sad or feeling down on themselves or feeling like they're just maybe not enough. I think that alone sets a completely different tone and precedent for things moving forward in our future, for us as adults, for our young children, and the, children after them. I think just that awareness alone and that platform, having that, is game changing, because it's something I didn't have when I was in school. There wasn't social media pages or people talking openly on social media about their mental health or struggling with those types of things. It was considered weakness, and that's not necessarily at all what the case is. It's not at all what the case is. So really having that open platform and allowing people to openly communicate about those types of things like we are now, is completely game changing.
Great. Appreciate that. And Luke, your experience is more on the outside, but you've been around it.
It's a mix of both. So, little background: I'm a product of a welfare kid. I grew up on the hand-me-downs and food stamps and holes in the sneakers, and I've already told you I have ADHD. Well, my ADHD wasn't diagnosed till I was already an adult. So, a lot of the time, as kid and teenager, it sounds conceited to say I'm smart, but I was a smart kid. And in school, you're getting made fun of because of the clothes, not to mention I was 90 pounds soaking wet, just a scrawny kid. So the typical quote unquote victim. So you get the bully, and then you get the teachers asking you, you used to be such a good student, what's going on? And you don't realize you're doing anything. And then you start be like, why can't I just be normal? Mix that with my father getting cancer when I was 10 years old, open heart surgery at 12, and he was the only breadwinner. So, whenever that happens, not only are you anxious about losing your father, but now you're also still being bullied, and you're still having the problems in school, and you begin to feel like you don't fit, like you're not part of this mold. And I never knew it was depression when I was going through it. I don't think anybody knows, yeah, I'm absolutely depressed right now, because you're wrapped up in your own thoughts. But yeah, the losing interests and all that was there, not wanting to get out of bed, all that kind of stuff. And then, after high school, I was good for a while. And then, had my daughter. That helped. But then, me and my daughter's mom split. So now, I'm trying to provide for my daughter. And, I kind of started off back to square one. Like, I didn't have anything. I had my car and my clothes and all that kind of stuff. And I'm struggling to, get a place that I feel is, worthy of somewhere my daughter can live in, so you start to feel like a failure. And when that happens, all those feelings, like, as you had when you were a kid, start creeping back. And I had those feelings again and again. Like, I didn't know I was depressed when I was depressed. I just know that, I cut people off, and I stopped doing the things I wanted to do. And I know this is a disc golf podcast and we're talking about depression, but me and my daughter's mom split in 2016. My buddy invited me out to disc golf in 2016 when I was going through this depression. And playing disc golf gave me a way to allowed my ADHD to hyper focus on something that wasn't my situation. So, like, getting out to the course and being able to have that reprieve for a few hours, I think, is what really cemented my love of disc golf, because it made me feel good for a while when nothing else made me feel good. And so I think that's where my love of disc golf started. And with that, I started getting new friends who also like to disc golf. My other experience with depression wasn't my own. I had a friend, Daniel. He was actually a neighbor of mine. I knew he went through bouts of depression. And I don't know. I guess with my own experiences, you go, well, yeah, but you'll come out of it. And he didn't come out of it. He committed suicide, and that sucked a lot. As downplaying as that sounds, this was back in 2018, and I don't think I'm fully over that, so I'm not going to elaborate on that too much here. But yeah, so when you have a friend do that, you are sad because of it, but you also start blaming yourself because you're his friend, you know? But sometimes the most depressed people, you don't see how truly depressed they are. They hide it very well. And I mean, it's why I got his initials on my knuckles, you know, right next to a tattoo that says these bones are only temporary. It's true. We're not here for a long time. But if you know someone who's going through it, reach out. Sometimes they just need someone to talk to. And sometimes they don't even want you to talk back. They just want to let it out. And sometimes that helps. That's all I got.
I no, I appreciate you guys sharing. We didn't script this, and we didn't talk much about it before because, as we discussed, is the conversations are far more honest when they're organic
Mm-hmm.
and not planned. Um, I won't. I'm not going to talk much about the problems I've had because I've discussed it at length so many different times. The periods of my life that were bad. Um, I have gone through periods of depression that led to substance abuse, and because starting with my world around me falling apart, and that's what led to this. Um, what I was hoping to do is, I think there's a confusion about what depression is. I think a lot of people have a confusion if they've never dealt with it before. And I've I was going online the last couple of days and just reading more about it, and I would read things like uh, depression is defined as long-term sadness and over being overcome with a loss of motivation, or like just bullshit answers, right? I mean, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't tell anybody what depression is or what it's like. And a lot of what I read was trying to convince everybody that depression is a mental illness, it's a disease of the brain, it's not a weakness, it's not a case of the blues or the sads. And think we're like, I think almost everybody knows this now. Like, I don't think we need to convince people that it's a mental illness and not a weakness. I mean, the people that
Mm-hmm.
don't get it by now, they're not going to get it.
Right.
But this isn't like 20 years ago when we're trying to explain to people that men can be depressed too. Like, we know this now. So we're beating a dead horse on that one, I feel. But none of it actually explains what it is. And I was hoping that I could try to do a better job of explaining it, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you guys can, you know, let me know afterwards if I feel like I was close or not. But so the first thing people need to understand is that emotions are chemical based. Okay, everything you feel, good or bad, is a chemical reaction that takes place inside your brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's related to chemicals everyone's heard of: dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, cortisol, oxytocin. And if you go down the rabbit hole, the actual science of this has to do with neurons communicating information, with chemicals, and it's not about the release of the chemicals; it's the reuptake of the chemicals and the electrical impulses in the brain, and blah 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 blah. And I don't think any of that's necessary to understand what it is. All you need to understand, and this isn't even entirely accurate, but it makes sense. It's correct in principle. when your brain releases chemicals that make you feel good chemicals, you feel good. And when it doesn't release the bad chemicals, you also feel good. And conversely, when the brain releases bad chemicals, you feel bad. And when the brain doesn't release the good chemicals, you feel bad. Okay. And if you look at it that way, that's all you need to know. It's basically how much or how little of these chemicals that make you feel. Everything. Everything is related to this. And, excuse me, in a healthy brain, your brain produces or releases the appropriate chemicals based on the world around you. If someone gives you a hug, your brain releases oxytocin and you feel loved. If someone gives you a present, your brain releases dopamine and you feel good. If you're in an airplane and you feel turbulence, your brain releases cortisol and you feel nervous. Uh, but it's not just about the releasing of chemicals. If your pet dies, your brain doesn't release dopamine and serotonin and these feel good chemicals and you down. But the important part of this is that if a brain is healthy, the chemical response to the world around you is appropriate, right? It's what we're supposed to feel. And the problem is that our brains are just organs. They're just like any other part of our bodies, and they can have just as many flaws or failings as anything else in our body, whether it's our pancreas or our our knees, right? Bodies are flawed. And that's what depression is about. It's about the brain not creating appropriate chemical responses to the world around you. And I think, and this, by the way, I'm not a doctor. This is all just my own, say, opinion, but my own, what I understand of depression is that really there's kind of two broad categories that it falls into. And the first one I think we can relate to, at least Luke and I, and then and maybe Derek as well, but definitely Luke and I, which is some forms of depression aren't that the brain doesn't create an appropriate response. It's that the response is either too strong or it lasts too long. Okay, this is the type of depression where something bad happens, you feel bad, but if you're struggling with depression, you feel disproportionately bad to the thing that happened. You know, if you get fired from a job, it's okay to be scared and sad, but you shouldn't feel that the entire world has collapsed around you. That's not appropriate. Sad and scared is appropriate. You know, if you lose a frisbee golf tournament, you shouldn't be sad about it the next weekend, right? That is too strong of a response to losing a, a sporting event. The other thing is when those feelings, whether they're appropriate or they're too strong, last too long. So someone passes away, you're supposed to feel sad. You're supposed to mourn. That's correct. But if you're still struggling with their passing 5 years later, that's not appropriate, right? That is something that the brain is not processing and not handling correctly. You know, there's a reasonable amount of time to feel things, and it should taper off in time. Now, you can't tell anybody how long they should mourn or be sad, of course, right? But there's certainly a range that can fall outside of. And I think that we can all understand that. My depression was caused by bad things happening in my life, but it was disproportionately too strong based on what was happening, and it went on too long. That's what my depression was. So I think that is a very common thing. I think a lot of people can relate to that. There's a second form of depression, and I'm not trying to suggest that I know what anyone else is going through, but this is the most insidious form. And this is when the brain is releasing chemicals, having a chemical emotional response when nothing whatsoever caused it. Okay, this is the chronic depression. This is what people, I think, are usually talking about when they talk about clinical chronic depression. Your brain feels sad when nothing happened to cause it. Right? This is where your brain releases chemicals, and it can release chemicals. Remember, emotions are chemical based. It can release chemicals as strong as if your child died, or that you just went through the worst divorce of your life. You can have that type of chemical response while you have a great partner, a great job, a nice home, kids who love you, friends that care about you, hobbies you're supposed to enjoy. That is the paralyzing depression that people that suffer from depression go through. They feel what you're supposed to feel when the worst thing in the world's happened, but nothing caused it. And I think what the challenge that someone facing depression of that sort faces, I think the biggest challenge is that our brains, when we feel something, tries to come up with rational, logical reasons for it. I think our brains fill in the blank as to the cause of the pain we're feeling. We then can convince ourselves that nobody loves us. We can convince ourselves that this really is the end of the world. We can convince ourselves that there is no hope, there is no future, because that's the only explanation as to why we feel this way. It's bullshit, right? It's our brains lying to us. The problem is that the very thing that is lying to us, we're also counting on to try to see through the bullshit and catch itself in a lie. Like there's this conflict of interest going on in your brain. How do you, when your brain's lying to you, how can you trust your brain to see that it just lied to you, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like that's very difficult. And a person with depression goes back and forth. There are moments when their brain is able to see through the bullshit, and they can look around and they can say, I'm feeling this way, but I know people love me. I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I know the world isn't falling, collapsing around me. I know this is just my depression. There's moments where they're able to see that, but then there's also moments of darkness where you're not able to see it. And when you're not able to see it, that's when you believe the lies that your brain's telling you. And that is what I think what struggling with depression is it's that battle between what you objectively could believe is reality at one moment, but then you're just overcome with the explanation as to why you're feeling this way. That's the paralyzing part of depression. And I think that that's what people suffering from the second type of depression go through. And I think, I'm sorry if I'm just rambling here.
Oh, you're fine.
The one of the big challenges is the first type of depression. Yes, our brains are misfiring, creating too strong of a response or too long of a response, but there are things in the outside world that we can do about this, right? Like you're depressed over a bad this or a negative that. You can take action to repair these things, to make your life better, to get physically healthier, to go see a counselor. Like you can do things because it is an outside source that is initially causing the pain. Whereas the second type of depression, you can't fix things around you to fix it because they weren't the cause of the problem, right?
Right.
And I think that is a big frustration for people that suffer from the second type of depression, because people are like, well, just start going to the gym or go get a new job, and but it's not being caused by these outside things. It's being caused by our brains completely failing us, and that is where it is truly a medical condition that needs to be treated medically. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor.
Right.
I'm speaking out of turn here.
And I've
Just my
seen it
opinion.
where people going through it, they start clinging to certain things. They're like, oh, I'm gonna start doing this. This will pull me out, and then that doesn't work, so they move on to the next thing. Like, oh, this is definitely gonna be the thing. And then when those things don't make you feel better, it actually sends you into a deeper spiral because now it's like, oh, now all these things that are supposed to make me feel good aren't making me
Yes.
feel good.
Yeah, and because they weren't the cause of the problem,
Right.
but we feel like they're the cause of the problem because our brain has filled in the blank. I feel this way, something must be causing it.
Right.
I mean, it's natural. I mean, that's a normal response. It's just that our brains are assholes. They lie to us,
Facts.
and God, how do you not believe the lie when the thing that deciphers truth from lies is the thing that lied to you?
Yeah.
It's a challenge. I mean, obviously, if there was an easy answer, it'd be in a leaflet at your doctor's office, and this would be an issue. It's not easy. It's complicated.
Right. Yeah. And then,
Um,
yeah, I've had it where I seen people get on medications for it, and
Mhm.
it becomes the thing where, like I said, they're grasping at it. They're like, this is gonna be the thing that makes me feel better, not realizing that a lot of those medications, they just stop you from feeling anything. And so that even makes them worse because they're like, well, these don't make me feel happy. No, they don't make you feel happy, but they also don't make you feel sad. They don't make you feel indifferent. They don't make you feel anything. It's really
yeah.
being able
Well,
to talk about it and let it out to somebody who's trained
mhm,
with people in that kind of thinking
100%.
is the best way to get over it, and to know that one session isn't going to do it. A year might not do it. You have to take the steps to do what it takes to make you happy every day.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the medication thing for a second
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, there's mixed opinions about this, and I don't think, I mean, these are opinions, so there
Right.
isn't a right or a wrong one. Um, and again, I'm not a doctor. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. But if your brain is failing you,
Mm.
for many people, medication is a godsend.
Yes.
You know, and the thing about it is, here's the thing. I'll tell you what I know about medication. I'm not giving an opinion about medication because
Right.
I'm not an expert, but I can give you an opinion about what I feel about medication because I'm an expert at giving opinions about my opinions, if that makes sense. Um, so the first thing is there are a lot of flaws in when it comes to this. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of this is what keeps people from seeking medical treatment for depression. Like yes, doctors sometimes overprescribe medication. Sometimes prescribe medication before trying other things, which is probably not the appropriate response.
Right.
And there's no question that this is an inexact science. If any doctor or psychiatrist, I can say this with absolute authority, if any doctor or psychiatrist says we've figured this medication thing out, go see somebody else. Okay, they're full of shit.
Right.
Uh, it's inexact. You can't take a blood test and the results come back Wellbutrin. No, that's not the way it works. So it is inexact. And so if you go to see a doctor, it is going to be trial and error. Let's try this, and then we're going to check in and see how you're doing. And if you're doing better, great. If you're doing worse, we'll change your dose or change the medication. Or maybe you're doing better, but there's side effects that you don't feel are worth the feeling better. That's fair also.
Mm-hmm.
But it is trial and error. And so if you do this, you need to go into it understanding that you can have a relationship with the person prescribing the medication where you're going to have honest communication about how it's working and what it's doing. And it may take time to find a solution, and you may never find a medical solution, but you may. There's no doubt there are people that find that it's a better solution. Now, there's two possible outcomes to going on medication if the medication works. The first is that it may be a short-term solution. Okay, so the things we were talking about where depression is caused by things in your life. A lot of times, because of the depression, the cloud that is in your head and the lack of motivation, and maybe even the lack of self-esteem, it's hard to take action to repair the things in your life. So there are many people that go on medication, and when they do this, the cloud lifts, they feel motivated, they can start looking for a better job. They could maybe go through the process of getting out of a bad relationship or getting in shape or whatever it is that was leading to their depression. And then when they improve their life, they find that they wean off the medication and now they're in a better position and they don't need medication. This is the best scenario, but many people find it a temporary solution.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. There are people that find medication helps them, and it is not a temporary solution. It is something that they need to be on for the long term. And I've heard, and you all have probably heard this or maybe thought it, like I don't want to take a pill every day for the rest of my life just to feel better. And like I get why somebody would feel that way, but look, if a diabetic doesn't want to take insulin every day, but if diabetes was the hand you were dealt, thank God insulin exists,
Right.
because you can maintain a life with this. And so maybe it's not what you want, but who cares if it's what you want to do? If it improves your quality of life, and if it turns out that's the best solution and you're better because of it, I think it's great that pill exists. Now, again, I'm not a doctor. Take all that with a grain of salt, but do not be afraid to seek medical attention and
Yes.
seek medical, because there are people where this is what they need. There's no question about that.
Right. And
I
by
just can't.
yeah, by no means am I advocating for not taking medication. All I'm saying is,
No, I didn't
yeah,
think you.
don't expect that this medication is going to make you feel like rainbows and butterflies the first time you take it, and
Correct.
everything is going to be great,
It may not.
because it takes, like you said, that might not be the medication to do it. You might find the one, but it also takes, internal work.
That should always be part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's just a complete brain, malfunctioning, there's no doubt that the life around you isn't going to be perfect, because if your brain wasn't perfect, you haven't built a perfect life around you. So,
Right.
yeah, there's no doubt that you have to take care of external things, talking about it, whether it's counseling. I personally think that just talking to a friend could be as good as a counselor, or talking to your grandma. Like I'm not sold on the necessarily that a counselor, just because they have a degree, are
Right.
the right person to talk to. I think just talking is the key, right?
Yeah. Talking to someone who will listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's God, man, it sucks. It sucks. It sucks that this is a thing. That we keep losing people. You lost your friend, and I've lost friends. It's terrible. Have either of you, if you don't mind me asking, had experience with medication?
Yes.
Did you?
Yes, but I was put on Wellbutrin, but for ADHD, which doesn't work.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I've heard of this too.
Yeah.
What about you, Derek?
I've taken a couple different antidepressants when I was younger. As I got older and started to experience more of life and start to figure out better coping, like healthy coping mechanisms for myself, such as disc golf or, things of that nature. I realized that medication was not for me. I've been able to, for the last several years now, successfully fight my battle with depression. I would like to call it that, without the use of medication, and whether that be having conversations with my friends or loved ones, or just taking the occasional, couple hours of my day to just be by myself. Silence is kind of one of my healthy coping mechanisms, weirdly enough, just sitting in complete silence. Others, people, my loved ones and things like that, they take medications every day, and probably will have to do so every day, for the foreseeable future. And that's not to say that, that's a bad thing at all. It's just two different, kind of me sitting here making that epiphany, like I'm one of the types of depression, and people I love and care about are the other. And being able to kind of have that perspective from the outside looking in to see that, is eye-opening, to be like, okay, cool. This is how I handle certain things, and this is how this person may handle a completely separate situation. And yeah, it's definitely, medication is just, I've had bad experiences with medication for me personally.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, whether that being misprescribed or just not necessarily ever being able to find the right one. I think I could remember maybe at least 3 or 4 that I've tried, definitely years ago, that were never for me, whether that be kind of going in line with what Luke mentioned, kind of just feeling lifeless, feeling like a zombie every day, where it was kind of just like, cool, I didn't care one way or another. I wasn't necessarily happy, but I wasn't necessarily depressed or sad either. It was kind of just like a consistent baseline all the time. Or having the experiences where some of them actually made me more manic, which was kind of an odd thing that I never really enjoyed. More stress and panic and breathing and things like that I had never experienced before, which was kind of a very surreal thing when, depression or anxiety or things like that, they promote physical body responses. That's something I've dealt with before. So yeah, I am pro medication if that is what works. Whatever works, that's what I'm for. As long as it's a healthy way to continue to move forward with your life, knowing you're gonna, have positive outlooks on things, I'm all for that, whether that's medication or meditation or homeopathic methods, even, whatever works, as long as they're healthy based coping mechanisms, I'm pro all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and my experience with medication was, it was a short-term thing for me. I remember trying one that had sexual side effects that I just said, this is clearly not going to be something that I want. And that
Been there.
happened. And I said, absolutely not. I'd rather be depressed. And then I tried another one and I didn't have those side effects. And I remember it feeling like it helped me. And this was a while back. This was when I was younger, but I don't remember it being a negative experience. But I also didn't stay on it long, and I was fine. But I was also in the category where I've generally been a happy person, but when my life was falling apart around me, I went into a really, really dark place, and I got happy. I mean, very happy when I came out of it. But I'm also category, at least according to my definition, I'm the first category.
Yeah, same.
Where it's not a chronic thing, and
Right.
so therefore it wasn't for me. Like, it's not something I would need because my brain, I think, works really well now. But I do know other people that are just not, they're just not, that's not the case. Their life is good. We know their life is good. We see how good their life is, and it doesn't mean a damn thing because that's not how they feel. And by the way, they might even know that their life is good,
Right.
and it still doesn't feel good. It's still painful.
Yeah.
But again, that's, like I said, I just all I ever have to say about depression or about the medication is not that I recommend it or endorse it. It's just don't rule it out, and I, especially if you're a guy, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Like, we're mostly past that macho BS, but it's not completely.
No, it
And
still
by the way,
exists.
nor do I think we should be completely past it. I mean, we're still guys. I'm sorry, I'm dating myself when I say this. I mean, there is something about that is still valid in
Oh,
our gender,
we
right? We're
we live
guys.
in the backwoods of northern Michigan. You'll hear nothing different from us.
Yeah. So yeah, we're on the same page. But it's also okay to to go see a damn doctor. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no more shame in antidepressants than there should be in insulin.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah,
It's the
absolutely.
same thing.
Or Advil if you have pain. Like if it's something
Yes.
that's gonna help you,
And who
give
cares?
it a shot.
It's the same as
Yeah.
saying to your
I
male
think of it
best
like,
friend that you love him, man.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I think of it like Pascal's wager. Like, the worst case scenario is you have sexual side effects for a week or two. Best case scenario is you're better off for the rest of your life. Like, it's a very small investment and risk
Right.
for
Yeah.
the chance of it getting better. So, even if you're doubtful, who cares? Um, yeah, I mean, and what you said, I didn't mean to dismiss what you just said. Yeah, I mean, reach out to your friends. Well, let's talk about that. This is another thing that I think is hard for people when someone takes their own life, because I've been around this now more than a couple times. It's been in my life, and there's so much guilt and second guessing of the people around them, and I I want to share something about that because all you can do is your best. The thing is that, like, the disease of depression, mental illness, depression is really strong, and the person is fighting it, but you as their friend are also in the fight too, because you're in that person's life, and the fact is that sometimes the disease just wins. That's it. Sometimes there wasn't anything that you can say or that you could have said. Sometimes there wasn't anything you could have done. Like, if you care about the person and you try, and you pick up the phone when they call and you check in once in a while, or even if you check in no more than you do with anybody else, but we call our friends. Like, sometimes you did everything you could do, and it just won, and it's not your fault. It's not the fault of the person who took their own life. It's the disease won, right? Sometimes cancer wins with you can
Yeah.
get radiation and chemo and whatever, and sometimes the cancer wins, and that's all this is. Sometimes the disease wins. It's not anyone's fault. And one final thing, if you know someone that this has gone through, don't start second guessing that you should have known that
Right.
this was going to happen. If a person is seeking help because they don't want to take their own life, and they're seeking help, yeah, they're going to give you signs. They're going to show you. They're going to cry out for help in some way, and you're going to see it, because if you don't see it, they'll cry out louder until you do, right? There's nothing wrong with this. This is just someone who's crying for help. If someone really actually wants to take their own life, they're going to hide it from you, and they're going to succeed.
Hmm.
Okay, that's like they're not going to let you know because they didn't want you to stop them. And so just don't beat yourself up. Like, we all second guess ourselves, but like we shouldn't.
Right.
The disease, it's the disease's fault. It's not my fault. It's not John's fault. It's this fucking disease, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's whose fault it is.
In my case now, just help me. And I'm not saying this will help everybody, but in my case, I come to the realization that I'm I'm not sad because of him. I was sad because of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was sad
Absolutely.
because I'm going to miss him. I'm sad because I'm not going to be able to do these things with him. What helped me get through it is, as sucky as it was for me and his family and all the friends around him, like, the only thing that gave me solace in the whole thing was going, well, at least he doesn't feel pain anymore, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I'm not saying like this could be controversial, I guess, but that's what helped me get through it, is realizing that I'm only sad because I'm not going to be able to do these things with him. But on the other hand, he
Yeah, you're
doesn't
right.
hurt anymore, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, you're right, and I know exactly what you're saying because you don't want to like give the impression you're saying that it's a solution to not
Right,
feeling pain.
exactly.
Because but I don't think anybody would read it that way. I mean, what you're saying is correct. Like it is about us. It is about the people that are left behind because we are the ones that are still
Mm-hmm.
carrying this. That person is done,
Yeah.
and yeah, it does suck. And what's funny for me, it's not funny, it's not the right word, but I'm not feeling pain for me. I'm feeling pain for the people that were closer to him.
Mm-hmm.
John was one of the um, well, he had come to some of my seminars because he was going to do run seminars for me. And by the way, I won't share it. John and I talked about his depression a number of times. I won't share anything uh, personal because he was a very private man. So I won't share anything that was private. But I think I'm okay to share this. Oh, can you plug me in? Thank you. Um, John was he was going to be one of the he was going to be the second person that was going to be running seminars for me around the U.S. And he came to a couple seminars. He traveled, to these events to learn this whole process, and he was really excited about it because this is for his finances and his future. I mean, this is something that he could do to make a good living. He was excited, and ultimately, what he this is when we started talking about it. Is he expressed to me that he didn't feel he was in a position to do these seminars because people fly in from out of state to come to these seminars that I run, whether he's teaching them or someone else is. Uh, People make an investment to come, and he said, "Look, I have days where I can't get out of bed, and I can't make a commitment to you, Scott, to do these events when I might let you and everybody down, and I don't know when those days are going to be." That's how paralyzing this thing is. Is that he turned down this thing that he was really excited about because he doesn't know what tomorrow's going to look like.
Right.
And then but then he ended up doing coaching for me, my form reviews online. He was one of the part-time coaches there, and it was great because I told him, I said, well, then if you're doing online stuff, then when you're around, great. When you're not able to be around, I'm not going to ask. Come back when you can, and I'm flexible around it. And this was, that's, I kind of got off track there, but this is, how I knew John, and this is why we talked about this topic. But I'm not sad for me because I wasn't his family. Like the whole disc golf community is his family, but really it was the people out in Santa Cruz. You know, that's his base.
Right.
And so many people out there were closer than me, and so my sadness wasn't really for me. It was for his family and, you know, for the people that were closest to him. Now that doesn't apply to you. It's you
Right.
were one of those people. So it's an interesting, yeah. My empathy is for not, as strange as it sounds, it's not for John. It's for the people that lost him,
Yeah.
that are missing, or people that are closer than me. I think I just rambled there. I'm sorry.
That's
No,
fine.
It's very hard to put your thoughts together when you're talking about something like this, right?
Yeah.
it's very complex, the
It is.
dynamic that can take place, you know, whatever the outcome from depression. The dynamic can always be different for everybody else.
It's absolutely different for every single person. Like we can relate to it, but we don't know what's going on inside someone else's head. None of us do. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So, y'all have anything to add to this?
No, I think
Yeah, I don't think I do.
I think we've, you know, the main purpose of this entire thing is to just bring a little bit more awareness and provide just another perspective or outlet or platform for people to realize what this all is. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. So
Yeah, like we said, if this is something you're going through, you know, everyone says just reach out. Like everyone hears that, everyone knows that you're supposed to do that, but we can repeat it. You know, just reach out to somebody. Um, I think what's important. Well, it's all important, but what the one thing I wanted to do is to explain the depression, so the person, when someone reaches out to you, you know, you have a little bit of a maybe a better idea. You know, I think you need to. I think there's two things when someone reaches out to you, you need to do. The first is make sure that line of communication stays open, and that you're there for them. You listen. You care. I mean, like, and we kind of do that automatically, but
Right.
you know, if it's someone we care about. But I think the other part of it is that I think it's important that you're a conduit between that person that reached out to you and professional help.
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know, if someone comes to you because their arm is broken, you can empathize with them. You give them aspirin. You can put ice on it. You could certainly do many things to help them. But at the end of the day, they need to go to a doctor that knows how to fix a broken arm, or at least can
Yeah, you
try.
can't reset it.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't mean that it's gonna always work. Remember, it's a disease that sometimes wins, but I think that the professional is equipped to do things that you just can't do. Like none of them. Like we're not. This isn't. We're not professionals. So, by the way, it's not an either or. You don't pass them on to professional. Now you're out of the picture. They
Right.
don't lose you in the role. You're still in that exact same role you were before,
Mm-hmm.
but you just get them to bring in that other piece of the puzzle in addition to,
Having a great support
and
system.
then yeah, absolutely. So yeah, um, that's all I can say, and I don't know. I hope it helps. You guys, man, I appreciate you sharing everything. I wasn't aware of, um, you know. So
Yeah.
thank you very much. I think people
Absolutely.
appreciate.
Thanks
I'm
for
not.
providing a
Yeah.
platform for us. So it's been great.
So
Yeah, well,
a little bit
all right.
different
Well, let's.
of an episode, but
Yeah. No, I know, and we'll get back to the weird, goofy stuff next week. But yeah, I haven't even posted anything. I mean, I played a tournament this weekend. I didn't even feel like it was appropriate for me to post it right now. It's just not. Just seemed like, I don't know. In a weird way, I felt like I'm moving on too quickly or something. Like
right. Yeah.
there needs to be some time that's it's about John. But then the life does go on. We will move on.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks everybody, and we will we'll like I said, we'll get stupid and silly next week. Talking disc golf.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Have a great rest of the week,
Thanks, everyone.
everybody.
All right, Scott.
See y'all.